get this party started. Folks, I'm Dave.
And hey, I'm Sean.
Together, we are Barstools and Bandtalk. And oh my God, do we ever have a surprise for you tonight? This is Sean's hard work for probably a month and a half, 2 months. If you're working on this, is that not right, Sean?
Yeah, since before Christmas. Very excited about this. A lot of people that know me knew that I'm a hair metal guy, and started talking to this gentleman, probably about 2 months ago, and he still teaching guitar to this day. One of my favorite bands growing up was Autobiography, and wasn't even a guitar player, and I thought Steve Lynch was one badass dude. And we have Steve Lynch tonight, and this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're going to bring him on. I hear the stories about early LA and Autograph. And Steve Lynch, you're a little sideways, brother.
Am I? What happened?
Maybe just lay down. Oh, there you go. You're good now.
There you go.
Okay. I don't know what happened there. I must have fallen down.
There you go. and we said, is it possible that you get more handsome 30 some odd years after you first come out? But look at you there.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Florida life is agreeing with you.
Yes, I think it is actually. Yeah. I've been down here almost going on 5 years now from Seattle. So
from Seattle.
Okay, yeah. So let's start with that. So you're in Florida. I mean, how did you wind up there?
Well, I basically grew up in the Seattle area, but I had a teacher up there, Don Mock, who was showing me, basic theory stuff. But I called in one time. I was actually playing professionally. Since '73, I was playing professionally, and I called into West Seattle Music where he was teaching at, and they said he's not here any longer. He's down at some new school down in Hollywood called Guitar Institute of Technology. And I went, what? Music school? This sounds really cool. So I actually called up information down there. I was in a hotel in Montana. We were out playing. And so I called up down there, and I actually got him on the phone. And he said, Lynch, quit your band, sell all your gear, and get your ass down here. He says, you don't even need to do the entrance test because you've been taking lessons from me. You already know, all the stuff that you're supposed to know to pre-qualify. And so 3 months later, I was there. And so I was there at the latter part of 1977. And then the school started in March of 1978. Wow. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made. But anyway, after living in LA for 15 years, I moved to Florida in 1992. And believe it or not, me and my girlfriend at the time, we left on the day of the Rodney King riots.
Wow.
We left like 4 hours
good
before
timing.
all the riots broke out. And so we're going, we thought, wow, because we were in the cab of the truck driving that with all our furniture in it and my car towing behind it. And so we heard it in the cab of the truck, on the radio as we were getting close to Phoenix. We could get the Phoenix radio stations in. And so we just looked at each other and high-fived each other, and we just went, man, we just made it happen, And so we lived in Fort Lauderdale which is on the east side, just north of Miami. We lived down there 5 years, and then my dad was getting ill. So I thought, you know what? I haven't really seen my dad, only once, in the last, since I basically moved from up there. And so I thought, you know what? I want to go back up there, and I want to get to know my dad again, before he passes away. And I'm really glad that I did that. And I ended up staying up there for 20 years. And I opened up a music school up there and everything. And it went very, very well. But the problem is with Seattle is that I'm allergic to the black molds up there. So being a teacher also, the students were always coming in sick. So I was always getting sick. And whenever I got sick, because I'm allergic to the black molds, it would turn into a respiratory infection. Oh. And my pulmonologist said, you've got to get out of here, because 4 times in 1 year I had to go to the emergency room because I actually stopped breathing. And so I just went, okay, that's it. And a month later, I handed the school over to one of the other instructors there, and I said, you can have it. You can just have everything in it, and I'm out of here, And so I just decided, I rented another truck. This time I'm single at this point, and I had my car towed behind it again. And I thought, where am I going to go in Florida? I think I'll try the West Coast this time. So I didn't even really know where I was going to go. I just decided I'm just going to go. I guess that's the privilege of being single and having no kids, you know, so it kind of opens that up for you. You can go do whatever you want. And so I picked the West Coast, and I parked the truck down here in Clearwater. And then I just drove around until I found the neighborhood that I wanted to live in, found a place, and moved in. And 5 years later, here I am.
That's awesome. So what you're doing now is you're mainly teaching, or I mean, I know you're gigging too, but so what's your primary, I don't know, gig?
I'm only teaching just on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And then I left Autograph August 6th of 2019. What it was basically I was the tour manager, I was the general manager, I was the liaison in between the booking agent and the band, and I did all the accounting, I did all the taxes, I did all the driving, I did everything. I had to collect the money, I had to do everything, and I was getting a little bit burned out from that. And I thought, you know what, I'm getting up there in age. Now's the time to really focus on what I want to do musically, what's inside of me. And it was different from what Autograph was doing. Just like I released a solo album in 2004. I actually recorded it back in 2004, 1994, 1995, but the record company went bankrupt, unfortunately. And so I couldn't release it for 10 years. And so that really put me in a dilemma. But I recorded that solo album, and I thought, you know what, I want to do this again. You know, and so this one, I'm looking at it, my new project, Blue Neptune, I'm looking at it like, I'm going to be doing most everything like I did on the Network 23 album that recorded back then. But I want to be able to have control of everything. I'm going to have, you know, vocalists come in, and saxophone player, and a couple different violin players. And
what style is it, Steve?
What's that?
What style is it?
What is it?
What style music is it?
Oh, what style? Oh, basically, I'm throwing in the kitchen sink. You see, I'm not looking at this project as having any boundaries whatsoever. Nice. What I want to do is I want to do something that I've never done before, and that's just whatever I feel like. I feel like this album is going to be my Dark Side of the Moon.
Okay.
You see, where it's just, you know, I hear different things being thrown into the music. You know, I want to have some African beats here and there, and just do whatever I feel like. And different drum beats actually make me create differently. You know, they make me write totally different, rather than just the 4 on the floor, you know, regular, rock beats that you have out there. And so I thought, you know what, I want to try all this different stuff, you know, and I don't listen to any popular bands at all. I listen to really obscure stuff like Porcupine Tree, Delirium, and stuff like that. Stuff that's popular in Amsterdam and throughout Europe and Scandinavia. It's popular there. In fact, when I went to Amsterdam in 2009, I got into the taxi, and all the stuff that I was listening to, it was being played, and I asked the driver, I said, is that a mixed CD that you have going? And he says, no, that's our radio. And I said, God, these are my favorite bands, but they don't play them. They get no radio play at all in the United States. And he goes, you're kidding, they're huge here. And another interesting thing is, when I went through, they first stamped my passport, and then I went and got my luggage. I just walked out and found the cab. And I asked the cab driver, I said, I didn't have to go through customs. And he said, what are you going to smuggle into Amsterdam? he said, everything's legal here. And so he said, but what you have to worry about is when you leave.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that's what that is. And another thing I wanted to point out was I stopped listening to guitar players back in 1978. That was my last guy that influenced me was Allan Holdsworth. And I thought that Allan Holdsworth was doing a lot of his stuff two-handed. So I was trying to figure out his licks two-handed. And then I see him, and he's just got this reach of like, you know, like a 10-inch reach with just his left hand, you know, and I'm going, damn, you know, I can't do that. My fingers aren't long enough. But he was the last guy that I listened to, other than the teachers and it was all jazz teachers that were there at the Guitar Institute. Now it's changed a lot since then, but it was all jazz guys when I first went there. There was only, I think it started out with 60 people, and there was only 30 people that actually graduated. A lot of people drop out because
Oh, is that right?
they find it a little bit too much on them, you know, because it's basically you got to do 7 hours, 7 to 8 hours a day. I was playing 7 days a week, playing 10 or 12 hours a day,
Wow.
and to keep up with the curriculum. Plus, I was writing all the stuff down that I was learning at the Guitar Institute. They had a lot of it in notation, but I didn't like reading. So what I'd do is I'd take all of it and I'd write it down on guitar graphs, you know, so that it looks like you're looking right at the guitar itself. And then I'd figure out the placement of the notes and everything, how it's easiest to get to from here to there. And I started doing that after I saw this guy, Emmett Chapman, the inventor of the stick, the Chapman stick.
Oh, yeah.
Where you play with both hands, where you play,
Yeah.
you know, you comp on the bass strings with your left hand, just like on piano, it's the lower register. And then with your right hand, you play on the thinner, higher register strings, and you play the melodies and you play the solos and all that. And I was just amazed by this instrument. And since I had done, you know, already experimented quite a bit with the two hands on the fingerboard thing, I asked him after the clinic, because he mentioned in the clinic that he got so far with guitar that he had to figure out how to, you know, create another instrument to accompany him better, more like on a piano. And so I said, well, can you show me something like that you did on guitar, you know? And he took it and he played he said, okay, you got an A minor position right here in the root position. And then he goes up here and plays a whole different position. And he goes, I just went, that is so cool. I gotta do that. And so I took all of the curriculum that I'd received so far. It was pretty early in the year when he did that clinic. So I started writing out everything two-handed, and I wrote it out in the method of those graphs, so you could actually see the patterns with
Like a tablature, you mean? Like tab? Would it be like today's tab?
No, it wasn't tab. It's like looking at the guitar neck itself. So
Okay.
you see the dots, you see the strings, you see the dots on the guitar neck and everything. So what I did is I configured out how to do it so that the right hand numbers, you know, I just had the numbers go in order the way you play it. And so this would be like a number 1 with a circle around it, you see, with your right hand. If it had a circle around it, that means your right hand. If it had a square on it, then it was your left hand. Now, if it was a hammer-on or a pull-off with your left hand, then it would have a triangle around it. So it was just like you look at it and you could figure out how to read it right away. And so when I graduated from the Guitar Institute, we did this thing where I played a couple of songs. They were like jazz fusion songs, where they were instrumental and it was all just the two-handed stuff. I played the melodies and everything and the solos and everything. Everything was two-handed. And when I got done performing, you know, everybody just loved it. They just thought it was great, and I won the Student of the Year award. Or I mean, the Most Likely to Succeed award. And Tommy Tedesco and Howard Roberts approached me after that performance at graduation, and they said, you should think about writing a book about that. And I said, I already have a stack of papers about that thick, you know. And so what they did is the following week is they took me into their publisher, who they had published their books, and they introduced me to him, and I showed how it was written out and everything. And he went, oh, this is easy to understand. And so I showed the publisher how to read it, and then I played it, and then he just went, within 5 minutes, it was a handshake and a deal right there. And I signed, you know. And so and that first book ended up selling a lot of copies. I couldn't believe how fast it was going off the shelf. And this was 1979 it was released.
Wow.
And so that whole technique was fairly new on the scene. Even though, you know, jazz guitar players, like 1930s, they had, oh God, what's his name? Johnny Smith. They had, you know, and then Harvey Mandel was one like back in the early 70s. I think I saw him in 71 and he was doing some of that stuff. And I just went, that is so cool. And then there was a guy in Seattle named Steve Buffington that really played really well with that. He showed me a few things with it. So that's why I was incorporating it back then, back in the early to mid 70s. You know, and then after I saw Emmett Chapman, I just went, that's it. I'm going to devote all my time to doing this, you know.
But to be fair, Steve, those guys were doing more accompaniments. They were doing like chords with their right hand, and more of a melody with their left hand. I mean, I just watched your Hammerhead video, like I don't know how you'd ever notate that. I mean, I'm like, holy dying Jesus, that's a lot of notes, brother. That's a lot of notes.
Yeah. What I did was I was combining a lot of intervals, mainly fourths and fifths, maybe fifths actually. And I was just climbing up the neck. And then when I did the descending part two, it was each, my right hand was miming what the left hand was doing. And I just went down and I just followed the flow down the neck. There's a fifth first, and then it goes into a fourth, and then I just follow it down chromatically. And then I climb back up with just fifths to the end of the solo. And then I do a slide down the E minor pentatonic and bam, or A minor pentatonic, then bam, I hit an 8 chord, and that's the end of the solo, just like that. So you got it now. Now I want to see you play it right now.
Okay. Oh, I only have my acoustic here. Sorry. Oh.
Well, so begs the question for me. So obviously you're a very schooled guy. You spend a lot of time learning your craft. How does a guy that's so schooled get into? I mean, and the hair metal genre, or whatever you want to call it, was kind of up and coming, and there was a lot of good players. But how do you go from that to Autograph?
You mean the kind of jazz fusion thing that I was doing?
Right.
Well, I still played in like a jazz fusion band, and then I was playing in another group called Viva Beat that was like really, kind of futuristic. Actually, it was kind of a pop band, but it was like kind of the whole new wave thing. So I was playing in that band too, and then I was playing in another group that was more kind of symphonic, and then I was jamming with the guys that later became Autograph. What happened there was, I had to make a choice, either be kind of a jazz fusion player and never make any money at it, or, and have to have another job to keep alive. But I just wanted to play guitar. That's all I wanted to do. And so it kind of, one thing led into the next, and I ended up being, more of a rock player. And that's what I got to be known as is during the 80s as, and still to today as being an 80s rock player, even though that's just a little of who I really am. That's why I'm really anxious to get this new album going. So people will see that there's a lot more to me than just that.
You mentioned the autobiography too. I'm really curious about that, because
Yeah.
I think that's probably going to tell the whole story.
Oh yeah, I start in 1955 actually, when I was born, and I go through and because my parents told me stories about the mischief that I used to get into and everything, and so I thought I got to write this stuff down. And so I start then, and right now with the book, I'm up to the year 2009 right now. So I've got most of it done. There's not a whole lot left to it, and it's pretty thick. Let me
It's exclusive here now, folks. Exclusive here in Barstools.
Yep.
This is what I have so far. I mean, it's really pretty thick. Now each one of these pages is going to turn into like 3 pages.
Right, right. That's cool though, man. That's very cool to get that out there. I mean, you talk about your dad too. That'll be nice, because that happened around that time. So it would be a lot of cool stuff.
Oh yeah, it goes through the 60s, then it goes through the 70s, up into the 80s. When I was with pre-Autograph and then Autograph, and through that whole thing up until when the band split up in December of 1989. It was literally the end of the 80s. And so, I mean, that's it. The 80s are over, And at that time, we were actually, our 3-album deal was up with RCA, but we were doing demos for Epic Records, and they were going to sign us to another 3-album deal. But then the whole, the Seattle grunge scene was coming in, and the 80s people just got completely cut off. And I thought to myself, well, now it's time for me to go on to the next part of my life, and record that solo album. But unfortunately, they went bankrupt, and there was a clause in the contract, so I couldn't release it for 10 years. Great. I didn't see that part. But anyway, and so radio would not play any more 80s stuff, and the record companies would not touch anybody in the 80s. I mean, that's it. I mean, it was literally like, that was it, no more 80s, period.
Okay, so how does Steve Lynch reinvent himself through the 90s then?
Through the 90s?
Yeah.
What I was doing when I was still with Autograph is I was writing material, but it just wasn't right for Autograph. And so I just kind of put it on the back burner, and I was bringing in other songs that fit more into the style of the band. So I had these songs on the side, and I kept on writing, and I just ended up like, okay, I've got to do these songs now. Now, in between, or at the last part of Autograph and up until I recorded, I did 325 clinics on advanced guitar techniques. I was promoting my first book that originally came out in '79, plus my 2 new books that came out in my instructional video. And I was doing through St. Louis Music. I was promoting Crate and Ampeg amplifiers and all that. And so 20 different countries, 325 clinics, and it was such a blast. And it was really good money too. So anyway, then I got onto the album and had it finished. Basically, I was recording in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, and that's where the studio was located. For the company I was signed to, and but when they went bankrupt, they were closing the doors with my masters inside of them. So I grabbed the masters. I mean, the engineers helped me get them out of the studio before they came in, and they locked the doors, and that was going to be it. My masters, I would never be able to release it. So we went to the airport that night, and they wanted to put the magnetic tape through the X-ray machine. And I'm going, no, that's not going to happen. So they refused to me to even get into the airport. And so, I said, look, you've got to get your supervisor down here, and so he came down, and we went through each box, and I showed him that it was just magnetic tape, but it can't go through the X-ray machine. And this guy understood, you can't, otherwise it's going to read everything, So I got onto the plane, and I made it back home, and then I did some more recording at Sound City, a famous studio in LA, and also at Fox Run Studios in LA. And then that's the time when my girlfriend and I, we moved to Florida. Okay. And so then what I did was I finished the record down there in a place called New River Studios in Fort Lauderdale. And so, but I couldn't release it, which didn't do any good. So, but anyway, so it got done, and I'm gonna remaster it and re-release it as well, because there's some good stuff on there.
So one of the things we were talking about before we started, so Autograph starts, and I remember reading the story, but you guys got your break opening for Van Halen. Is that pretty much how it went?
Yeah, it was the drummer, Kenny Richards, was actually jogging every morning with David Lee Roth. Now, at this point, we weren't a band. We were just guys that got together in the studio, or in the rehearsal studio. I guess the singer owned the PA that was in there and was loaning it to him. So they gave us weekends for free, the big room at this Victory rehearsal studios in North Hollywood. And so we just get there. We were just friends. And so we played in different carnations of different bands together before. But we just thought, let's just go just jam, drink beer and play cover songs and stuff. And then we started to write some stuff, actually. And that's when Andy Jones, the producer, came into one of our rehearsals, and we played him some of the original stuff. And he went, this is really good stuff. He says, look, I got some free time down at Calvert Studios down on off of Sunset in Hollywood. Let's go down next weekend and cut a 5-song demo. And we said, sure, why not? Well, Kenny played this for David, and David loved it, okay, and said, hey, you guys want to come out on the 1984 tour with us? And Kenny said, well, we'd love to, but we're all in bands right now that are actually paying us. So
sorry, Dave.
me and the keyboard player were playing in a group with Holly Penfield on Dreamland Records. The singer was playing in a group called what was it called? I can't think of the name right now, but that was on Columbia Records, and he was playing with Earl Slick on guitar. And then the drummer was playing in a group called The Coup on A&M Records, and Randy Rand, our bass player, was playing with Lita Ford. So we couldn't really go out on tour, but we thought, what, we can do this for a few months, and so we just thought, we'll write a few more songs, which we did. And next thing you know, we're borrowing money from people, and we're, putting out the hat to sweep together enough to rent a Winnebago and for enough gas and food to make it to our first show in Jacksonville, Florida. So we drove from LA to Jacksonville, straight across the 10, all the way through Texas and everything. And we made it there, and we thought of a name on the way. It was Autograph. You know, we just thought, well, we'll call it that for now. You know, it's only going to last a few months anyway. But then once we started playing, all these record companies were out, and they were throwing these offers at us. And I'm just going, God, this is really good. And then RCA threw this offer at us that we couldn't refuse. They said, look, you can keep 100% of your publishing, because they knew that, like all these other record companies, like Epic at the time, and it was Geffen and Warner Brothers and A&M, and all these companies were throwing these, you know, offers at us. And so we went with RCA because they said 100% of your publishing, you've got it, you know. And so we signed backstage at Madison Square Gardens in New York.
Very cool.
So, you know, and that was it. We had to call our bands and quit them, you know. And the funny thing is the night that, you know, when we got back and we basically officially signed with the vice president of RCA, and that was Paul Atkinson, and he was in the band The Zombies. Remember that band?
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, he was a guitar player from The Zombies.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we signed with him. And then later on that night, I get home and I get a call. It's like 1 a.m. and I thought, okay, who's calling me this late? And I picked it up and they say, is this Steve Lynch? And I go, yeah. And the guy said, well, this is Paul Stanley from Kiss. And I said, yeah, right. And I hung up. Okay. Anyway, he calls right back and he says, no, it's really me. I got your number from Mike Vardy at Guitar Player Magazine. He said that, you know, because I was in the Spotlight column, the first column that he did, I was in the first issue of that. And so it's showcasing new talent, you know. And so anyway, that was January of '83. And so Paul called up, you know, and he said, no, it's really him. And so he wanted me to join Kiss. He had heard the demo and everything. He saw pictures of what I looked like. He said, you're a perfect fit. This was right after Mark St. John. Okay. And Mark St. John had some problems with his hands and everything, so he wasn't able to do it any longer. And I said, Paul, thank you very much, but I can't do this. I just signed a 3-album deal, like literally hours ago with RCA Records, and with my own band, you know. And he said, well, that doesn't matter. I thought, what? He says, look, we're offering you starting out at $375,000 a year, $375,000 a year. And I said, well, that's a lot more than I've ever made in my life. That's probably as much as I've ever made my whole life. But I gracefully turned him down. He says, well, nobody turns down Kiss.
That's wild.
And I said, I just did. And I hung up.
Well,
And that's
Nice.
that. Yeah.
Did he ever talk to you
That's
again?
in the book too.
Did he
That's
ever
cool.
talk to you again? Because those guys are known to hold grudges, Steve.
Yeah, no, actually we didn't. Autograph a couple of years later was doing this this benefit for Find the Lost Children. This, like, children that were on the milk cartons and everything back then.
Yeah.
It was a benefit for that. And you know, a couple of members from Kiss, it was Gene and Paul were there, and then, you know, from Rat and Motley Crue and just every LA band you can think of wanted to be a part of this, because it was like a huge deal. It was at the Roxy on Sunset Boulevard, and they actually had to close off Sunset Boulevard because it got that packed. I mean, there were people out in the street trying to get in. But anyway, Paul was there. He walks up. I'm sitting there practicing my guitar, getting ready to go on and play a couple of songs. And the singer from Autograph walks up with Paul Stanley, and he introduces Paul to me. And I said, hey, Paul, how you doing? I reached out my hand, and he just kind of stuck up his nose and just turned around and walked away. And I just said, okay, that's that. I guess he's holding a grudge. You know, but obviously we had sold a lot of records at that point, so I made the right decision. Now, the difference being is that, of course, it's Kiss, and it's a huge band, but look, I came from a jazz fusion background, so it's not really my thing, for one thing. And the other thing is that playing with a band like that, you're a side man. You know, that's what it was. It was a hired gun situation.
Right.
And I thought, you know, the band that I'm in now, I'm writing. I'm a full part of the band, you know, and this is my own thing. I'm an equal member in this thing. I don't want to be a side man for anybody. You know, I really want to do my own thing.
That's a ballsy move, brother. That's a ballsy move. I love that story.
Well, you know, it's just one of those things where you know, you look at it at the time, of course I was broke, but I looked at it like it was the right decision because then if I would have done it, I would have just been another one of the guitar players from Kiss. And I know that they wouldn't have let me do nearly, you know, the kind of solos or anything. They would have wanted me to keep it real tamed down. Even though he heard my demo, you know, I think that he would have wanted me to tame it down quite a bit. They would have wanted me to. So I'm glad I made the decision that I made.
Well, so you make that decision, and I mean, I've been thinking about this since you and I started texting. You know, your first single comes out. I don't know what you thought of it when you wrote it, but I mean, if you take, I would say maybe the top 10 songs of all time from that genre, that's got to be definitely in the top 10 of most recognizable, probably most covered tunes.
Oh yeah,
right.
Well,
did you think that at the time when you were writing it?
Oh no, we didn't think that. RCA didn't even want us to put that song on the radio. They wanted the first release or on the record when we were recording it. They didn't think it was strong enough, and we're going, hey, it's called Turn Up the Radio. I mean, radio stations are going to love this. People are going to love this, you know. But, you know, these corporate execs, they don't understand music, and that's a big problem. They look at it from a money perspective, and they look at it like they thought that, what was that song? I can't even remember the name of the single that they wanted us to originally do. Send Her to Me. That was it. Send Her to Me. They wanted that to be the first release, but we're going, hey, look at, we might not have a second chance. You know, when a band tries to get the radios, a new band tries to get the radio to play another song, they're not so hip on it. Yeah. So we talked them into releasing, you know, Turn Up the Radio as being the first release. And so it happened, and the rest is history. I mean, we went into to promote it even more, we went into the studio for 2 days after it was released, and to all the call letters, you know, KISW, WTOZ. It took us 2 8-hour days to say all these different ones. We said, hey, this is Autograph, turn it up KISW, you know, and turn up the radio, you know. And so we did all these different ones, and it took us forever. I mean, we were like hoarse after we couldn't talk, you know, after doing that. But you know what? We sent it all out to them, and it exploded. I mean,
no doubt.
When they're hearing the call letters from their radio station on there, they play the hell out of it, and it worked brilliantly. So,
well, not only a memorable song, but I mean, memorable solo. I mean, you have to, anytime you do a clinic, you have to have people asking you about that solo. I'm a drummer, and I can hum that solo. You know what I mean?
You got Guitar Player of the Year for that, or the Guitar Solo of the Year. Did you not for that?
Yeah,
for that,
Solo of the Year. Yeah. And you know, all of the solos that I've ever done, I've always spent a lot of time on them because I look at a solo as being the same thing as lyrics. You don't want to repeat any lyrics, and you want to write something specifically for that song. I knew that song was probably going to become a hit to some degree or another.
Yep.
And so I spent 5 8-hour days coming up with that solo. I kept on coming up with parts, and I'm going, no. Eventually what I did was I put my guitar down, and I just listened to the section of that guitar, or of that thing. Now, we were in rehearsal. I had them record right from the chorus and then into the outro chorus, you know, without me playing in the solo section. And I brought that home, and I listened to it over and over and over again without a guitar in my hands. And then I started hearing the first part, that da 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 da, you know, climbing up the A Mixolydian mode. And I thought, okay. Then I figured out what I was hearing in my head. I picked up the guitar, and then I put my guitar back down, and I listened. Okay, where should it go from there? And I did this over and over again until I eventually had in my head what I wanted to play. And then I figured out every different part that I was doing, and it fit together magically. So every solo that I did after that, I always did it in my head without a guitar in my hands.
That's really interesting.
And then I figured out what I was hearing in my head. Because you know what? That's the best way to do it. Because then that way you don't get messed up from noodling around with stuff that you already know how to play. You know, that's your favorite licks. Now you're creating something that's different just for that specific song. You see, and so that's why I've always done it. I've always doubled all my guitar solos. They're all double. Now you can't really tell, but yeah, they're all doubled. It's 2 guitars. Each solo is wow. 2 guitars playing the exact same thing. Now
you didn't do that on Hammerhead.
Hammerhead is triple. That's 3 times.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that took 8 hours just to do that song. I finally got it down though, but
Jesus, Lord, God in heaven.
yeah, and so, but anyway, what I do was when I was recording it was I'd have the machine, the Studer. It was you know, the 24-track Ampex tape. That was back then when you could, you know, you had to physically slow down, you know, it to get it to see. What I do is I slow it down to 99%. That way, when it was at regular speed, it was actually playing at 101. Then on the second track, I would record it at 101. So then when you slowed it back down to speed, it was actually playing at 99. So each one was slightly off, but when you put them together, it just makes it sound thicker. And so when you double it, and then I would have one panned at 10 o'clock on the left, and then the other one panned at 2 o'clock on the right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gets this, that way when you're listening on headphones, you can actually hear the separate guitars. But you know, when you're just listening to it, you know, from speakers without headphones, then it just sounds like one guitar, you know, just slightly off pitch. And what I liked was like my vibrato pans, when I would use them in certain solos, they were slightly off, but I love that sound. It's just like they're just off enough where it's a bitch to get them perfect. You know what I mean? When you're using a vibrato arm, it's really tough to get, you know, the same bend exactly the same on another track. And so they were always slightly off, and I love that. You know, so.
Wow. So who are your influences growing up now? So I mean, I heard somewhere that you're a big Jimi Hendrix fan. I think you're a bass player first. Is that right?
Yeah, I started playing bass in 1967, but I was a total Hendrix fan. You know, I was always listening to Hendrix back in the 60s, and I thought, you know what, that's what I really want to do. And so, you know, the reason I played bass was because there was already a guitar player that was living on my block, and he said, "Why don't you play bass? We'll put a band together." And so we did. But then he passed away actually when I was 12 years old. You know, it was an unfortunate thing. 13. I was 13. So was he. And but anyway, I decided, you know, after that, I took a little bit of time off. I was still playing bass, but I decided on Hendrix's death in September 18th of 1970. That's it. I'm trading in the bass. This is what I really wanted to play guitar. So I traded my bass in at the local music store there in Seattle, and I got myself a Stratocaster, and that's it. Been playing ever since. So that's all I know how to do.
So a question I have: a fellow from Seattle that goes down and makes his living in LA and kind of is on that genre. When the Seattle scene broke, how did you feel about that?
Well, you know, coming from Seattle, I thought, wow, this is really cool, but I didn't care for the music. Now, one thing I do understand is that the 80s rock scene, especially at the end of the 80s, it got a bit too homogenized, too pasteurized. It was overproduced. There was too much reverb, too much delay on everything. And every song was, you know, basically catered to get radio play. I thought it's really losing it from what it started out to be as. And so I understood when the whole grunge thing came in, because that it was more raw. It spoke to the people. There was a lot of teen angst going on there, like Smells Like Teen Spirit, you know, of course. And which is just a body spray anyway. Anyway, that's what Teen Spirit is. But, you know, I understood it, but I couldn't get behind the music or the lyrics. Like I said, I understood it, but it wasn't my thing. I thought that, you know, it was too depression, suicidal, drug-based, you know, addictive kind of drug-based. And it wasn't my thing. It just wasn't. I thought music should be uplifting to people rather than bringing them the opposite direction. And that's really what I thought about that whole music scene.
I just find it's interesting that you're from Seattle and that whole thing blows up, and it's an interesting sort of angle, I guess.
Right. Like, I thought, oh, it's cool. Seattle's really getting noticed here. It's basically, it's on the map now, big time. Yeah. You know, but I never cared for the music. You know, like I said, I understood it, but just wasn't my thing.
Sounds
Well,
to
we're
me
here
like
in
impeccable timing is what you have, Steve. Like I said, your timing, like we're talking about leaving LA just before the Rodney King beatings, talking about, the end of Autograph at the end of the 80s, which is just before the onset of the grunge scene, and going out to Florida. It's like your timing seems perfect in your life so far. Is that something that you feel like you're blessed with, or is this something that's kind of you're survived, or how does this happen for you?
I think I just have good mojo. I just think I could kind of foresee when something's going to happen, when it's at the end of something, even like in a relationship, I can see like, this isn't going to go anywhere. So it's time to bail now, and so
Can you put that in your book, please? I'd like to read about that.
but I guess it's just that I kind of see things happening before they actually happen. And so I make the moves necessary, beforehand.
Cool.
It's interesting just to close the Seattle loop, because when all that was going on, we're in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and there was a grunge movement that happened out here. Sub Pop Records from Seattle came in and signed bands. So there'd be guys playing 2-3 months. Oh yeah, there was a ton of bands that were signed out of here just based upon that whole, and it kind of messed with our music scene for a good 10 years. It made it really weird.
Yeah, exactly. The same thing with the Seattle scene. It was a decade, where it put kind of everything else out of commission for a while.
Yeah, and I mean, I knew a lot of guys who grew up rich kids that were singing about not having any socks and shoes. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. You know what I mean?
That's got to be y'all.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I heard, music that was coming out of Halifax during that time, but I didn't know this whole Sub Pop thing had that much of an impact.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it was huge. It was huge. I mean, I was in a band that we were kind of like porn graffiti was really big at that point, so we were kind of in that genre. And we couldn't get arrested. We actually had to go to Toronto because Toronto was still a little bit more rock at the time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But it did have a huge effect. And I mean, even to the point where you'd be playing bars and they'd be like, yeah, we can't book you. You're good. we don't want good. We want suck. Right.
Can you put your guitar a little bit out of tune and only wear sneakers and shorts? Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And singing things about killing yourself.
Right.
It's funny. Right. Now, I like the punk scene. Like, I like the early punk stuff. I was kind of a punk fan. That was raw energy. It was still exciting. It was fun. But I never understood a lot of the grunge stuff. It's like you said, to Sean's point, like they didn't have it that bad off. Like, why are you so depressed, fellas? You want a hug? It's like I couldn't figure it out.
You want a hug and a Xanax?
Yeah. Right on. So your project now. So obviously we kind of led with that. So you mentioned it's going to be it's not going to be a one size fits all. It's going to be anything goes.
Yes, that's
so
right.
So where are you at in the process? When do you think you see it being released?
Oh, probably not for. I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to release singles or I'm just going to wait to actually release the whole thing, which I'm kind of leaning towards now because it's a concept album. I'm going to have songs running into one another, just like on, Dark Side of the Moon or The Wall, or, like Led Zeppelin's first album, where everything just kind of bled from one to the next. And I always admired that. So I look at it like it might be a 2-year process. It doesn't matter because this is my, like I said, it's like my Dark Side of the Moon, and I'm going to really spend some time on it. Notice Pink Floyd, they spend a couple of years, 2 or 3 years in the studio before releasing an album. And I think that's brilliant because each one becomes a classic, and I think that's really cool that they spend that much time writing and recording and making sure that, they have a really unique, presence to the whole thing. And I really enjoy that. But I'll release tidbits here and there of kind of what it's going to sound like, so to keep people's interest going. But I'm going to take my time with it.
Well, it's got to be gratifying too that you're at that point in your life where you said you kind of step back and where you don't have to. You're not on the clock to go out on a tour. You can go to the studio when you want. That's got to be pretty gratifying.
Right. Yeah, that's a real luxury to have that. And I have an income now where I really don't need to do anything other than what I'm doing. I'm doing just fine. But I figure the book will come out, and I think that it's going to do really well. I think it's going to do really well. it's a comedy of errors, believe me. It's like, I look back at my life and I just laugh. I go, all this stuff really happened to me, you know? I mean, did I really take acid when I was 13 and steal a steamroller? Yes, I did, you know?
Everybody did.
Yeah, I thought it was a common thing, you know?
Just to touch on what you said a second ago, Steve, I just wanted to ask a question because, and you're right, because you've had that luxury of, well, you've had a very successful career. My question is now, hearing how you write, even your solo, when you had that empty show where you listen to a rhythm or you listen to your whatever it is, and then you put your solo in afterwards, one bar at a time. That's why I'm excited to hear the Blue Neptune stuff, because it's going to be very much the same thing, I'm sure. You're going to listen to a rhythm and write a whole song around it.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to worry about the confines of what the record company put out, 3 albums, we want them one every 6 months, and blah, blah, blah. It's going to be going
right.
Yeah. So I'm excited to hear
it. And what I'm hearing now is I'm hearing whole orchestral parts in there. These whole symphony parts coming in with all the strings and everything. And I'm just going, yeah, I want that in there, And then I hear it come into like a real heavy, almost like a, like an Al Jorgensen beat coming in, just like a real heavy, kind of techno beat coming in after that. And just going into this whole other thing. And that's one of the things that Porcupine Tree does. And that's why I appreciate them. They're real artists about the way that they write. It's mainly Stephen Wilson, the singer, that writes everything and all that. But he has brilliant members in the band. I mean, everybody's just top notch. And the way he puts it all together, it's just like he takes you on a journey in each song. And each song can have like a dozen different parts. It doesn't matter,
Right.
But the way he puts it all together, it's brilliant, and it just captivates you. And I think that's what I want to do. I want to be free to be able to do that. I want to be, if the song's going to last 7 or 8 minutes, let it be, whatever it takes to get the point of the song across to people, So I want it to be kind of etheric. I want it to be just really experimental, and so that people really look at it and go, this is really very, very interesting, because they actually didn't know that I had this inside me, to be able to write orchestral parts and stuff like that. And I've always wanted to do this, and here's my chance to do it. So
I think I know the answer to the question, but are you going to have a core group of people, or are you going to bring in somebody that you think is required for the song? Maybe a player that nobody knows that you've heard somewhere, or how are you going to approach that?
I'm going to have different people come in. And I do have a core group of people right now, and that just means that I know who's going to play piano on it. I know who's going to play sax on it and violin, and I know who's going to be doing most of the vocals. But I also look at it like there may be some songs on there, like I want to have an operatic singer come in, a female. It's got to be female, and I want them to do a kind of scat singing kind of thing, like at the end of the Dark Side of the Moon album, the last song, where all it is just this lady singing scat, over the song. And I just thought, that is so brilliant, and so I hear this operatic part, so especially when I'm trying to go to sleep at night, and then that's when I hear everything, and so I have to get up and I go, okay, I gotta figure out the guitar part of what I'm hearing the operatic singer doing in my head, so I don't forget it, because otherwise the next morning it's completely gone. And so 5 o'clock in the morning, I finally get it down and I go back to bed. I hear these things and I just go, you know what? It's so cool just being open and exposed to whatever I want to use, just having that freedom, not thinking about radio play,
Right.
not thinking about anything, because I don't care if it gets radio play. It's not about that. It's about getting my yayas out, showing my personality, showing what I feel inside, and that's it.
So how are you going to distribute it now?
What's that?
Would you go through like your iTunes, the Spotify, that type of thing? Is that what you do?
Yeah. What I'm doing, as far as the way I'm looking at, publishing the book, is that I have a couple of friends that are very successful authors, and one's with Simon & Schuster, which is a huge publishing company, and and then another one is with Kensington. Now, the problem is they say, look, we only get a certain percentage of wholesale, okay? And he said, the way to do it now, as soon as their deals are up with both companies, they're going to go off on their own. And they said, because they've already established themselves. And they said, look, you're established enough where you could just get a marketing company to put your book out and put all the marketing behind it. And then that way you make the money. You may give up 15, 20% to them, but then you're making 80% rather than 17% of wholesale.
Right.
Okay. It's huge difference. So the difference in selling 10,000 books, just that minute amount can make a massive difference. That buys you a house. You know what I mean? As opposed to paying your rent for a few more months, So,
yeah. Paying the cable bill.
And so the way I would look at it with the recordings as well is it's all going to be just going through a marketing company and just putting it out that way, where they take care of all the placements everywhere it's being played. Now, one of the things also that I want to point out is that I make more money now from the royalties from Autograph than I did back in the 80s. And the reason being is that all the jukeboxes now around the world are digital. So they don't have guys out on the field, from BMI, Broadcast Music Incorporated. It's all digital, so it just automatically comes up. They don't have to leave their office. They just keep track of everything. You see, before, back in the 80s and into the 90s, you had to go out, and these guys had to count how many times each song was played on the jukebox, on each jukebox in each different club, all over the place. Okay, it's not that way anymore. And then plus, now you have all these other things like, like iTunes and Spotify and Pandora and everything, where they're playing your songs. Well, I just wrote down every song. I registered every song with this company called Sound Exchange, and they collect from all of these places. A lot of times, Broadcast Music, BMI, they don't do that. And so therefore, when you have it, these other companies, there's also another one called Music Reports where I just filled out all the songs for that. And now I'm getting in all these checks that I never expected before. And even with BMI, I registered a lot of songs that they didn't have registered on there, like from my solo album. And then like from the album Missing Pieces, which was released in 1997, the singer released it's the demos that we were recording for Epic Records after our RCA deal. He put that on an album. And so I registered those songs as well. And they got a lot of radio play in some countries. Some, you don't hear them here, but you'll hear this, stuff being played, from that album. And also, more obscure stuff off the first 3 RCA albums in different countries. In fact, when I get my international royalties, sometimes there'll be like the most popular song will be the last song on our first album, which will be All I'm Gonna Take. And I'm going, wow, this is huge in Bolivia. Who would have thought? But they just love that song down there for some reason. So there's different areas where the radio was like 2 or 3 down on the list,
Wow.
And other songs were more popular. So.
But you folks had some success too by having these songs in soundtracks too, right? In movies and TV shows?
Yeah, we did 5, we did soundtracks, songs and soundtracks for 5 different movies. And then we did, a couple songs in Miami Vice. Mm-hmm. And, those things, you get royalties for those forever. It never runs out. Every time somebody rents that movie or whatever,
right.
It's shown on cable or Netflix or whatever, then you still get royalties for that. That never goes away. And now again, like with the whole movie thing, there's so many different things. It's not just going to Blockbuster and renting a movie. They're playing them on all the streaming channels and everything. So,
right.
So the checks go up, and that's a wonderful thing. I'm not going to complain about that.
I'm listening to you talk, and I'm thinking you would have done just fine in Kiss. You would have been able to handle it business. So we want to be respectful of your time, Steve. Exactly. But I know how I found you. But for everybody that's going to watch this, where are they going to find you? Where are they going to find your material? How do they find out what Steve Lynch is doing these days?
Oh, they can send me a message on Facebook, or they can send me a message on Instagram. But everything that I'm doing, I keep, I'm always doing interviews, so I keep everybody abreast of everything that I'm doing and going to be doing. And you'll be able to find my book right away as soon as it's released. And I think I am going to do the self-publication thing because I want to see more money than
That's awesome.
17% of wholesale.
Yeah.
But anyway, but all that stuff, it'll have links on it on all social media. And same thing with when I start to release songs on Blue Neptune, it'll be the same thing. You'll be able to find it all on social media.
Well, and I can vouch for you.
Go ahead.
I was just saying I can vouch for you because you were amazing getting back to me when we had a couple hiccups, but for me this has been great because I grew up listening to your stuff, and it's always cool when you meet somebody you grew up listening to and they're a great person. So I want to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Well, listen, brother, we'll do our very best to promote whatever you're doing on our
Okay.
Sure.
And I'd love to come back on when the book is released and we can talk
Absolutely.
about that and go through some stories on it. You guys can.
I want that relationship advice in that book. I want that chapter on a relationship advice.
Yeah. You got it.
To date.
Yes, that's right.
Right on. Thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate you doing this, sir. And we will get you back.
It's been my pleasure. Absolutely.
Whatever you're doing, we're into it, brother. We are in.
Okay, you got it.
Thanks so much, Steve. Peace out, brother.
Okay, peace out, you guys. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Barstools Bandtalk, the complete music.